Reconciliation Memorial was a peace offering from President McKinley from the north to the south, and to tear it down is to break that hour or that era, or that moment of reconciliation between the two regions of this country. It is tantamount to bringing back the sectional hate that existed between these two regions after the war.
To the front of the statue, two Confederate heritage groups organized, and behind the statue were the counter-protesters. But among the Confederate supporters, there was one man that you might not expect.
H.K. Edgerton hears this a lot.
When did you come over to our side? I didn't come over to any side. I was born a Southerner.
And to support his Southern heritage, Edgerton attends lots of rallies like this one, where he makes his voice heard.
What has Jesse Jackson done with these folks around here on the school?
He greets his fellow supporters, and there are lots of them.
I agree with him 100% on everything he spoke about. Everything he said is absolutely true.
And in 2002, Edgerton was inspired to share his truth.
One night I went home and it felt like something was shaking my bed to wake me up, and it said, HK, why don't you walk to Texas carrying the flag and get people to donate for each mile that you walk along the way?
And he did. Edgerton walked 1,600 miles and raised money for civil cases involving the Confederate flag. For him,
it was a glorious journey.
And while some don't agree with Edgerton's message,
I would love to ask my professors about that during Black History Month, but sadly, we spend most of the time talking about why this stuff happens.
To the disapproval, Edgerton says,
go home and find out who you are, find out who your ancestors are, and then you come around here and talk back to me.
Because Edgerton will always
I'll make my stand right here in Dixieland.
He did tell me, I'll be doing this till the day I die.
This is H.K. Edgerton with a shout out to all patriotic Americans, especially my Southern family, and especially to the sons of Confederate veterans whose charge is to defend the good name of the Confederate soldier and sailor. The naming commission's recommended base name changes and even the planned removal of the Moses Ezekiel Reconciliation Cenotaph in Arlington National Cemetery are just the tip of the iceberg of the evil written into the act of Congress that established it. The law of this land now states that our Southern defenders who stood against the illegal invasion of the Southland were traitors. This amendment proposed by Elizabeth Warren that passed over President Trump's veto is inconceivable, and I cannot let it stand. I intend to fight this, but I am going to need your help.
Hello, and welcome to the Tennessee Informer. Thank you all for being with us. Last month, the South lost one of its greatest defenders of its culture and history, its true history, and the righteousness of the cause of secession and the stars and bars that so many of our ancestors fought under to defend the principles of the war for independence that their fathers and grandfathers had passed on to them. You would have to go back to the 1860s to find someone more dedicated to the cause that walked as many miles as he did, carrying the excellent banner of the South through all seasons and hours of the day. And he did it with a smile on his face and love in his heart for all things Southern, to honor those that defended their state in the Confederacy, and to share the truth of that cruel time of our history and correct the many big lies told about our Confederate ancestors. Our topic of discussion tonight is not an issue, but a very special soldier who went above and beyond the call of duty for truth and honor of the South. That man was H.K. Edgerton of Asheville, North Carolina, who died last month after a long illness. He was known as the Black Confederate, and he would have been 78 years old today. Today's show is done in his honor, and although I was fortunate enough to have him on the show via Zoom last year, I never had the opportunity to meet him in person. However, my guests today all worked with him or met him in person at some point. Joining us tonight here in the studio is Rick Revel from right here in Paris. Thank you for being with us, Rick.
Good to be here, sir.
And joining us via Zoom is David McAllister, friend and attorney for HK, and his wife, Lunell, the Miss Lunell that you often heard HK refer to, both of whom live in Florida, and Ronald Messer, who also lives in Florida. Thank you all for being with us. How is everybody tonight?
Everybody
missing
doing great.
Mr. Edgerton.
Absolutely. Well, it seems fitting that we all meet to remember HK today on his birthday. He's left quite the legacy across the South. Rick, how well did you know him, and what can you tell us about H.K. Edgerton?
But it goes back about 20 plus years. We were at Morristown, Tennessee, and I was working with the Civil War Courier. I used to do a lot of writing for the Civil War Courier, so they had invited me to an event at the, I think it was Salem Church, I think was the name of the little church, and it had been a field hospital, and so the blood stains are still on the floor there. And so they'd set up a big tent, and it was raining cats and dogs, and so we all had to stay inside the big tent. We were all part of the evening program, and they were having live music there. Mr. Moore was singing some of the music. I think his name was Ron Moore, and so he was doing the music, and I played along with Ron a little bit, and got to the portion of the show for me to sing my songs. I did so, and then it's time for HK to get up and do his portion of the program, and we listened to him for a little while, and he's always got the energy, and at the very end I was supposed to sing Dixie, and so I did my portion, did Dixie, and I could just see his face light up. He said, "Ricky boy, that's my favorite song." He said, "I love that song." And so from that point forward, every time I'd see him at an event, and I saw him at Chickamauga probably a year or so after that, and a big reenactment. That's where I usually would see him at reenactments or SCV events. But across a big tent, I just had walked into the tent looking for a bottle of water, just trying to find something to parch the thirst. It was warm that day. I could hear his voice, "Ricky boy, hey Ricky boy, sing Dixie." And he was just that interesting individual. He always was full of energy and always the kind of the life of the party.
Always had a big smile on his face.
The life of the party, usually.
So when did you see him last time?
It'd been a little over a year ago. We had a chance to do an interview for my TV show, History Highway, and I wanted to have an opportunity to tell his story and talk about the 1,600-mile journey and talk about and his life journey.
Right.
You know, starting out with NAACP and being the head of his chapter, his local chapter, NAACP, and then meeting Kirk David Lyon and starting to evolve and started to find out about his own history. And as he did, it was kind of interesting listening to his journey and finding out about his Southern heritage and just a whole new light come on. And he said, "Wow, I have a whole different perspective now." And it did. It changed his life completely. And then friends that he had in the black community turned against him. And so it was just really interesting, some of the things that he went to and went through, and so I got a chance to hear some of those stories, and of course after events we'd go out and eat and sit and visit, and so he would fill you in with a lot.
I
of
bet
cool
he was
stories.
a character.
He was fun to go to a restaurant with.
Yeah,
and he would literally walk up and down the aisle, just like as if he was putting on his speech somewhere. He'd walk up and down the aisle, and Dewey Barber from Dixie Outfitters had made some shirts with his image on them. Right. And so he always would wear one of those shirts. And so it was a conversation starter everywhere he went.
I bet.
It was a hoot.
I bet it was.
Yeah, I loved him.
Well, David, you and your wife, Linnell, had a long and special relationship with HK. Tell us about that.
Well, Linnell knew him a lot longer than I have. I first met HK in the events involved with dedicating the large Confederate flag that flies over the intersection of Interstate 4 and Interstate 75 here in Tampa. I managed to get him on a radio program where he was debating people that wanted to take down this flag or didn't want it to be put up in the first place. And since then, I've been all over the state of Florida and also other places, Tennessee, Memphis, at the SCV reunion with him. We went down to Beale Street there in Memphis. Also took him up to Boston to enemy territory. When I was going for my 50th reunion of my high school, prep school up there. And I think that was an eye-opener for him too. And it was unusual for the students at Harvard University to meet a man in a Confederate uniform who was also a black man.
Oh, I'd love to have seen that. That would have been great.
We've been to a number of county commissions and city councils together and involved in lawsuits and all sorts of things. But let Linnell speak about her longtime relationship with HK.
Well, like Rick, I met HK more than 20 years ago at an SCV meeting, and several times since that. And he started writing letters to me, and I didn't really understand why, but I kept finding my name in letters more and more and more. He never told me exactly why he started writing to me, but after Dewey Barber's son, Rhett, was in that serious accident, and he had been posting his work on Southern Heritage 411, I thought Mr. Edgerton's work was so important. I tried to find a better way to help him get the word out, and we started, first of all, a MailChimp, and then we set up a Substack for him, and it's still available for people to see, and we're adding the older reports to it at hkedgerton.info. And I also just recently set up a YouTube for him with trying to aggregate all the videos that people have taken about him and some videos that I have made of him, and all that's up there, as you can see, on that HK Edgerton legacy. But, you know, I was so impressed with his recitation of the poem that a fellow from Tennessee wrote, Michael, I can't remember
Dr.
his last
Michael
name.
Bradley. Dr.
I
Michael
Am Their
Bradley.
Flag.
Mm-hmm.
And I helped him produce a high quality video of that as a fundraiser for his travel. And, you know, he's always getting a call to go somewhere for someone, and almost all the time nobody had any money. So, you know, I basically, you know, made an effort to try to raise as much money for him as I could to help him, you know, get out to support his babies. And he loved the babies, and he was so magnetic to children. I've watched him in dozens of parades that he did with our chapter, and the children would literally leap into his arms, and they wouldn't want to let him go. And he would always want to give him a flag. We would, you know, give him flags to give away, and he called them his babies. And that's something I would never forget. And he was quite a champion for the Reconciliation Memorial at Arlington. He had spoken there at a Confederate Memorial Day ceremony years ago, and he was particularly offended by Senator Elizabeth Warren and the Naming Commission, and he really didn't like Taliban tie, and he was a supporter of Trump, you know, for many reasons, but particularly because he had vetoed that. Yeah. But he was enamored by David's legal theory about the Bill of Attainder, and he felt like, you know, he agreed with David that it was unconstitutional.
But before we get
writing about
before we get too much into that, can you? Some people may not know who Taliban tie is. Can you tell them who Taliban tie is?
Well, Ty Sedgwill wrote a book, Robert E. Lee and Me, and he was platformed by PragerU, and he was an instructor at West Point who was promoted to general after he retired, an honorific promotion. And apparently it turns out he went to Washington Lee University and resented not being a Virginian and being a transplant his entire life, and decided to take it out on Lee and everything Confederate later in life. And he's now a professor, one of the Soros professors at Hamilton College.
Surprise, surprise.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. So let's go back to the legal theory that you were talking about, the Bill of Attainder.
Well, in the U.S. Constitution, the government is not allowed to pass anything that's a Bill of Attainder, which was, it's not very well known nowadays, but it was a popular technique in the 18th century where our founders were subjected to that. where the legislature, the parliament in England would anathematize, they would outlaw someone without giving them a trial and take away their land, take away their titles, take away their honors, as it was called. And this resulted in what's called corruption of blood, which meant all their descendants were also tainted by the same, crime, even though they had never had a trial.
Kind of like a caste system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Mr. Edgerton was very upset by all that, and one thing he wanted to do was a lawsuit, but lawsuits are very, very expensive, and we couldn't really get any traction on that. But that was one of his agendas. And of course, the other agenda he had was to get the Reconciliation Memorial back up for the America 250. He really wanted it up by July 4th, and we're the group who he served with on our committee with Defend Arlington, is trying to find a way to make that happen. We're very, cognizant of Mr. Edgerton's desire to see that, and trying to find a way to do that. So, anyone who's listening in that has some influence with Pete Hegseth or with President Trump, rather than waiting 3 more years, wouldn't it be nice to have Lee Greenwood or Rick Revels singing, at the rededication of the Reconciliation Memorial in HK's honor on July 4th this year?
That would be. So where does it stand right now? I mean, this is an important issue. It's important to him. So can you tell the audience where that suit stands at this time?
We're sort of in a blind spot. Pete Hegseth announced it's going to go back. Governor Youngkin signed an agreement to restore it in 3 years, but as far as we can tell, nothing's been done. So we're in limbo, and that's where we're trying to find a way to elevate the issue, to get attention on it. And if they took it down in a week, why does it take 3 years to put it back up? That's what Mr. Edgerton used to always ask.
Yeah. Well, we need an army of Edgertons to march on D.C. over this.
Well, I do want to mention, that we helped Mr. Edgerton do a calendar, and we have a tribute committee that's working on some living tributes and some eternal tributes for Mr. Edgerton. And, we're looking for a way to keep his memory alive and his legacy going. And we're having a memorial for him on Saturday, a virtual memorial. They had a small family service right in the middle of the worst weekend in Asheville, blizzard, snow and ice all over the road. But we're having a virtual memorial on Saturday, and we want to try to sort of bring interest to his desire and try to keep his thing going. But anyone who purchases a calendar at hkedgerton.info will get notice about that, and they'll also get notice about the Defend Arlington project.
Right.
And I really hope people will listen to the videos in his YouTube channel. He was a genuinely nice person. He drove hours to stand guard at my mother's funeral in East Tennessee, up in Doe Valley. And I'm just sorry that circumstances prevented me from, the weather, from attending his funeral. And I just appreciate the opportunity, to share a few thoughts about him and encourage people to. That was him on the trip to Boston in front of the removed Lincoln Memorial, by the way.
Wow.
And to share the significance to really me, but also the world. He was an inspiration to so many people.
Yeah. Now, the memorial, the virtual memorial, the website for that, I think we had it up there just a second ago. And then there's also a T-shirt. You also have T-shirts for HK.
That's a fundraiser for Defend Arlington. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, but now if somebody wants to attend the virtual memorial, do they go through How do they? Where's that site at?
I'm really sorry to say that I don't have information on that. I'm a bad girl. But we can put a post on your YouTube.
No problem.
We can put a post on your YouTube once you publish it.
Okay.
You can put a link on there.
Okay. And of course, if they're already subscribed to, they'll get that opportunity.
They'll get it.
Or also, I think it's under. You have an organization there in Florida as well, right, David? Save Southern Heritage, I think, or something along those lines.
Yes, that's the name, Save Southern Heritage Florida. Save Southern Heritage is really started in South Carolina and has other branches, but the Save Southern Heritage Florida group is very active politically, whereas some of the lineage groups like the UDC and the SCV aren't really allowed to get into legislative activity, but Save Southern Heritage certainly does.
Okay. Now, Rick, you mentioned this a minute ago that Kirk Lyons is the one who taught him, his true history and got him inspired and fired up to do this.
And of course, we have, I think, his present-day lawyer with us, but Kirk kind of helped him through some legal battles in the early days and helped to guide him. And a lot of it, I think, if I get my story correct on it, this is while he was still part of the NAACP and got in trouble with the city of Asheville, and Kirk David stepped up. And here Kirk Lyons steps up and help him walk through all his legal matters, and that's how they became friends, was through that actual time of legal challenge. So
the NAACP wasn't supportive of what he was doing. I have
a
hard time believing that.
It kind of shifted out of his favor as he began to gain knowledge about his Southern heritage. They wanted to befriend him quickly, and so Mr. Lyons stepped up and helped out quite a bit.
If I could add to that, Mr. Edgerton had discovered that there was a game going on and kicking out the senior citizens. Were many of his members.
Yep,
and
that's what it was over.
It was a rigged deck, and it was a profit opportunity. And when he started to blow the whistle and tried to call in the NAACP legal team, they wanted a ransom to come down and try to help him sort it out.
Wow.
And
their legal team was very expensive.
He couldn't raise the money.
Yes,
so
several thousand.
He went to Kirk. Multiple tens of thousands.
Yes.
He went to Kirk, and Kirk said, "I'll help you."
Yep.
And the next thing Mr. Edgerton knew is when he got really an attorney that was willing to help him, they ran, we never heard of this, election fraud on him, and dethroned him as the president. And never heard anything about election fraud. They basically broke all the rules and, rigged ballots and a rigged election to get him out of there so they could keep doing their whatever they were doing.
So when did this start? When did he, when did Mr. Lyons school him up on his true history, and when did HK start doing this?
He was completely schooled up by Kirk because, his mother was a Confederate.
Yeah, he did talk about that. He talked about her putting flags on his bicycle when he's growing up. Putting Confederate flags on his bicycle.
Wow.
During the centennial, she would put flags on it. All the kids' neighborhood, bicycles and tricycles. And he says he didn't know where she got them, but she got them from somewhere.
Can you imagine that?
She ended up having only woman that had a Confederate state funeral. He's very, very proud of that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Now, what was her first name again? What was his mother's name? You remember?
I can't remember, but it was neat. We actually had the SCV had honor guard there in the whole 9 yards at her funeral. It was pretty dang cool. Yeah.
Okay.
Paid her high honors.
His dad was a preacher, and he was from North Carolina. His mom was from South Carolina, and she and all his brothers and sisters honor their Southern heritage.
Great.
HK was also particularly offended when the NAACP in 1991 came out with a proclamation or a resolution that the Confederate symbols, especially the battle flag, was a, quote, odious blight on the universe. And he took that very personally because he liked carrying his flag around.
And he came home, he told me he came home and he told his mother about this. She says, we should just put that one in the trash can.
And he said that Martin Luther King never said anything against Confederate memorials or the Confederate flag.
Okay.
You know, HK was a nice man, but he also could be a bit of a gadfly too, especially in front of politicians. We've been down one memorable trip to Hollywood, Florida, when they wanted to change the names of streets in Hollywood. And he got very upset with the Black Lives Matter folks and with the members of the city council. We actually had to be escorted out by security for our own safety out from that particular one. But we've been to Bradenton, we've been to Tallahassee, we've been here in Hillsborough County several times with him wagging his finger.
He actually marched through Florida.
He had a march through Florida as well, and
Wow.
to rehabilitate the flag.
So now
Southern Cross Revival March.
you talked about his first march was to Texas, from what, North Carolina to Texas?
Basically, Asheville.
Started in Asheville and went to Austin.
1,600 miles to raise money. And what was raise money for what again?
Well, this was at the time when the children were being, condemned for wearing shirts to school showing their ancestry and their heritage. And then Governor George Bush had removed some memorial plaques from the Supreme Court building, one showing that the children of the Confederacy had donated a significant amount of money, and one in tribute to Robert E. Lee. And he just said, this is going to be bad. This is a bad trend. This is a bad precedent. Somebody has to, stand up for this. And he made it his work.
Now, did one of his brothers march with him in that
Terry
one?
Lee, his little brother is what he called him, marched with him.
Wow, that is a long, long way. And I'm sure, what time of the year was it?
I think he started in October, and I think he finished in March. He got 2 keys to the city all along the way. He had people in the 10-mile club, the 20-mile club, the 50-mile club. That's a picture of him in Mississippi in the rain. They marched minimum of 20 miles a day.
Oh, wow. Now, you said at one of these events, and I think in this maybe was more recent years, that he had he was assaulted by somebody in Antifa.
Well, yeah. So this was in Columbia. So remember Dylan Ruth and
Right.
Nikki Haley and
Yeah.
all that jazz? Well, this was when, they were just getting their feet under these large mass protests.
Right.
And he was the first victim of Antifa before anybody knew what Antifa was. Somebody had grabbed his flagpole, whacked him in the teeth, and the police got the guy. But HK was such a gentleman. He said, oh, he didn't really mean to do it. It was an accident. And, you've seen these later pictures of him with no front teeth. That's what happened. And he sort of wore it as a badge of courage. We talked about maybe trying to get some restoration. He said, no, that's my war wound.
Wow. And so probably some young guy, and maybe, and I wouldn't have been this nice. Maybe he just like, okay, I don't want to ruin this guy's future. Was that maybe something that figured into his?
I think he just said, I think he thought it was an accident, but he was a very generous man, and he didn't really see what happened.
Right.
That was their tactic, the Antifa. Their tactic is they just sneak up from behind you and they do it to you, and you don't know what happened.
Now, his overall goal was basically to teach people the truth about their culture, their history, the war for Southern independence.
He saw himself as a civil rights fighter. If you look at his obituary and his history, he had stood up for the underdog his entire life. That he stood up for kids. He wanted to make sure that justice was done. And that's why he got kicked out of the NAACP, is for standing up for the older black citizens in his hometown. And, when that was taken away from him, the next most targeted people he saw was the black and white Southerner, particularly the white Christian man. He saw them as the number one enemy, which of course we've now come to realize he was absolutely right when they removed Lee from his pedestal and every other Christian figure belittled and dethroned and the church occupied.
Right. So overall, his family was supportive. His family, I'm sure he lost some friends, but overall of his family was supportive.
Absolutely. The people who weren't supportive was the paid henchmen at the NAACP who were, and he talks about the odious blight on the universe and how, and he wrote a report about it, and he basically says that the NAACP was complaining that we're broke, we don't have any money, blah, blah, blah. And the Northern Yankee, he calls them Jewish. I wasn't there, but this was a meeting in Texas, and you can read about it on his reports. He says, they said, don't worry, we got plenty of money, but we need you to do something for us. We've got these companies, we've got these people that we want to send them south and go get some of that Southern business. We don't want to send our people down there and having them listen to the band play Dixie and seeing any of those Confederate flags down there. So what you need to do is you need to go get rid of all that stuff. And we'll keep you in your limousines, and we'll keep you in your paid jobs, and we'll keep you, we'll keep you in business. But we need you to do this for us.
HK was also a target of the Southern Poverty Law Center as well. He was on their hit list, if you will, of people that are to be taken. Along with Kirk Lyons, of people that are to be taken down and canceled. They were not successful because we know better. We know who our supporters are and who our heroes are.
Yeah. So how's his family doing? I mean, it hasn't been that long. So do you know how they're doing?
Well, his sister, who he lived with, had been having some health issues, but she seems to be doing better. And the big issue right now is the family going to continue the fight for justice against Hillsborough County? And we hope and pray that they will.
Yeah, and I want to get to that in just a second. But now, he was a U.S. Army veteran as well. Do you guys know much about his time in the Army?
He was in the, he went out of high school. He was brought into a business in Asheville as an electronics guru. And when the Vietnam War came, he got recruited to go help with that. And he was ended up being an instructor in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. And he was there for several years. And he was an instructor in electronics. And he didn't go in country as far as we've been able to tell. But he was up there teaching everybody, hobnobbing with the generals and the colonels, and making sure that everybody left with the knowledge of how to use the technology that the Army had.
Wow. And he was playing golf with the brass, wasn't he?
He was. Getting a few extra side dollars on the side.
He taught golf, and especially I think he set up a golf team for a high school there in Asheville.
He was a regular Bagger Vance, huh?
Oh yes, he played in a tournament down here in Florida and actually won some prizes. So
wow.
Hickory.
The Hickory Shaft tournament, yes.
Wow,
here in Tampa.
I didn't know he was a golfer too.
Oh, quite very much so.
Wow. So before he got involved with this, defending the South, said he was in NAACP and he did his stint in the Army, and it was like, what did he do in between that time before he became really known for this?
His little brother owned a business before he retired in California, and he also worked for a couple of major companies, including IBM. But he and his electronics acumen, the business that he owned was a business machine company. So he used his electronics knowledge in a lot of different ways, but he was always sort of the guy that they went to, not just because of his knowledge and skill, but he had the right melanin. And so he, did the government contracting business and different things at the companies he worked for.
What was his studies up at Minnesota?
Oh, he went to University of Minnesota, and he said he loved that place. And he was a business student. And he actually was involved in not-for-profits. He was with the United Way Agency. I mean, he was a community leader. He was head of the student government, the Black Student Union. He was always a leader in everything, that came about. And he always wanted to find a way to make things better and to find justice and, elevate the community. He was always about, and he used to complain about crabs in a bucket. He said, the problem the Black community has is they just want to be crabs in a bucket. And he really didn't like that. He was always trying to get people out of that mindset and say, how can we elevate ourselves and get out of that mindset?
I haven't heard that term before, crabs in a bucket. It's
when you have a bucket and you have crabs in it, they don't want to let the crabs out.
Okay.
They'll pull the crab down instead of letting the one crab out.
If one tries to get out, they'll pull it back. Okay, I got you. Makes sense now. All right. Now, not too long before he died, he was in Hillsborough, Florida, for the Veterans Day event. And Ron, you were there that day as well, and let's get you into the conversation. Tell me what you saw happen there in Hillsborough.
Well, thanks for having me, Dave. It was just a normal day. I didn't even really want to go down there. My wife wanted to take our children because her brother was killed in Iraq. She's a Gold Star family. And Sergeant David Andrew Croft has a little memorial down there. So we were just going to go, and believe it or not, I was going to introduce my ministries to the Hillsborough County Park. And unfortunately, they got to find out the other side of the ministry, the advocacy side. But when I went there, the atmosphere was kind of normal. And I saw Mr. HK, and he was just, everyone wanted to talk to the man. And I couldn't wait to get my children over there to introduce, because I love history and I love the reenactments.
Did you know him? Did you already know him?
I had no idea who the man was. I just thought, wow, what a brave man, the first Black guy to be wearing that down here in Hillsborough County. I didn't really understand the politics of Hillsborough County, the Veterans Park, up until later on the morning. But typically stand in the back of the event because I am a combat soldier myself, 20 years in the Florida Guard, a couple tours in Afghanistan.
Thank you for your service.
Well, thank you for your service too, Dave. Standing in the back, I noticed Mr. HK, and there was a commotion going on. And then I was just trying to figure out what was going on. I didn't even know Miss Linnell, and he moved himself to the back of the event, and he was literally standing 20 feet from me. And then I see all these men with guns just kind of coming in. And originally I thought they were coming for me because I too have done advocacy work in Hillsborough County with my lawsuit with the Department of Veteran Affairs, which we'll get into at a later date on your show. But what I saw was the worst display of arrogance, and just I couldn't believe that they were doing this to a geriatric guy. I didn't know he was a veteran. They literally told him to get on the golf cart or he's going to have a lot of problems. And I believe they put their hands on the man, and I didn't know what to do. I probably should have recorded with my phone, but I was so frustrated that I told my wife and my children, we're getting the hell out of here. We're not going to stick around. And when we were leaving, that's when I found Miss Linnell and Mr. HK on the side of the road doing their peaceful protest. So I just chose to take that hard left instead of the easy right to the Mission Barbecue because we were going to go have lunch, and the rest is history. And I got to meet him, and I prayed with him on the side of the road. I told him just how disgusted I was, and I went home and found out who he was on the internet. And the man changed my life because I couldn't understand why they would do that to the guy. But it's all the diversity, equity, inclusion. It's the same thing that happened to me at the Department of Veteran Affairs. So that's kind of the short version. We can get in the long one on your show. But it was just horrible what happened to the man. I couldn't believe it. Not in America, not that I've served our country. And when I found out who the man was, it was just I couldn't believe it.
And Linnell, you were there. So What were they saying? What was the reason that they? I mean, we know the reason, I guess, but what were they saying to him?
Well, I was sort of shocked and appalled and shell shocked, and I was sort of listening and trying to video it. I fumble fingered it, but he reported to me later. Because they were interacting with him and I was sort of behind, but from best as I understood and what he told me later is they were complaining about his flag, and we had seats and he didn't have the flag up, but they got to this point in the program where they asked the different service branches to stand for their song. And so they asked everybody in the Army to stand for their Army song. They started with the Space Force, and they made a big joke that nobody stood up. And then they got to the Army, and of course he stood right up, quick like a bunny, and up came his flag with him. I mean, he wasn't like flying it around. He just had it there at parade rest.
Right. Well, that's what you would do with a flag. You wouldn't leave it laying on the ground.
Right.
No, of course not. But it wasn't 30 seconds in, maybe 45, and the next thing we know, there's all these men in black coming in like they had been positioned just waiting for this. And they basically said, you've got to go, you've got to go. And he's like, why would I do? Why would I do? And they said, you got to go, come this way, come this way. And they had guns.
Did they have their guns drawn? Were their guns drawn?
They were not sheriff's deputies, because sheriff's deputies were green with white shirts. And we found out later they were private security that was hired by the county on that day, all in black, all with guns, with no ID.
Did they pull their guns out, or they just had the guns?
They had them right there at the ready.
Wow.
They didn't pull them, but they had them right there, very visible.
They were ready to pull them. Dave, it made me so uncomfortable because being in combat and having horrible experiences with the sheriff, I literally thought they were coming after me. For them to come after HK, I couldn't believe it. So it was very traumatic.
Scary. It was scary.
Has there ever been
They ushered him out the back, and they said, you've got to walk out of here. And I said, walk where? And, he's a heart patient. He can't be walking all these, places. And they brought over this golf cart that Mr. Messer mentioned. And they said, well, get in the golf cart and get. You got to get. And it was insulting, and it was scary.
So was there no law enforcement there? There was just private security?
Oh, they were there. They were doing this on the stage.
There was a sheriff at the front entrance as we left, and that was it that I saw.
There was two on the stage too, Miss Linnell. They were there to get the awards.
So was there ever any official explanation for this?
Oh, yes. There was a letter written by Frank Strom, FrankStrom, who is the Hillsborough County Veterans Affairs and Community something or other person. Services. And he wrote an extensive letter to the county commission after we brought this to the attention. Mr. Edgerton's video was posted, and it became sort of aware of what had happened. And he fabricated what happened. He says, oh, well, his flag was distracting people, and we said he could come back. He just have to get rid of his flag. And it was all BS.
Was anybody complaining? Were any of the other people around him complaining?
I think most people were just shocked. Just shocked. There was a bunch of people who were trying to greet him and say hello to him, and they were shooed off.
The county had invited the public to come to this park, Veterans Park.
All veterans of all wars.
All veterans of all wars. And of course, in Hillsborough County, Florida, 99% of the veterans of the war between the states were for the southern side.
Sure.
And they were also memorialized in the prisoner of war monument there at the Veterans Park. And HK was just representing this soldier of this particular war in this particular place, which was their hometown.
Well, he was doing double duty.
The problem in Hillsborough County, they've had a long history of discriminating against the Southern veteran. We had a county seal here in Hillsborough County that included the Southern Cross, which Mr. Edgerton had that day. Not the Stars and Bars, but the Southern Cross, which was his flag of choice.
Right.
And they moved that out of the seal. We tried to get a War Between the States memorial at this park. We even had a groundbreaking ceremony, and then the base of the memorial would include the Southern Cross of Honor insignia. And there was complaints about it, either because it was a cross, who knows. But then even though we raised all this money and had a groundbreaking, they pulled back and said you can't do it. So there's a long history of discrimination. This was just, and when he pulled out the flag out of the car, I said, Mr. Edgerton, are you sure you want to take it? And he gave that big old smile, like, of course.
Well,
I wouldn't go anywhere without my flag.
He was pulling double duty that day. He was there as a U.S. Army veteran, and he was there as a Confederate veteran.
He was.
So I think, if anything, they should put a statue up for him. I don't think that'll happen right away, but that's what should happen.
That's one of the things the tribute committee is going to be talking about.
Okay, Ron, real quick, and I want to come back to your mention about the tribute committee, but Ron, real quick, something, as you said, an activist yourself, and we're going to have you back on the show, but just real quick, can you kind of tell the audience what you do?
Well, I used to work at the Department of Veteran Affairs, and over this last administration, the Marxists, the Obamas, the Joe Bidens, they really did come after the white Christian man, and I got caught up in that with the diversity, equity, inclusion. They put me through the ringers for about a year and a half at the workplace, where I literally had to walk off the job. But I used to work for 2 congressmen, so I know how to do Freedom of Information Act requests. So I got all this information, and I sued the demonic man pants off all these women at the Bay Pines VA, and that's exactly what I did. So I have a lawsuit that should be done any day. It's been in the courts for about 2 years, equal opportunity, and the charges are hostilities, discrimination, and harassment towards a white Christian guy. I had 2 directors removed because of my lawsuit, and then Mr. Trump came in there and basically cleaned up all the remaining DEI. So I created the SergeantGrizzlegrits.com. That was my character, and I was actually doing not armed peaceful protests at this time, but I was out there dressed up as my character, and I put the fear of God in the Bay Pines VA. And naturally, when I saw Mr. HK, I felt like I had to go back out there. So I came back the following day. I did my first civil rights investigation, where I documented what I had witness, because I'm a master level trained guy in mental health. So I know that you got to do it when it's fresh on your mind. And then it just went downhill from there. So believe it or not, I became a First Amendment auditor during this time too. I just put a camera in these people's face and then let them behave any way they want. And it was appalling. It was nothing but incompetence. Frank Strum wouldn't speak to us. And then we found rebar. I mean, the whole place was a nightmare. It's just diversity, equity, inclusion. And then that turned into 3 weeks of peaceful protests. And then it turned into armed peaceful protests, which is very nice for my resume. Because here in Florida, you can have weapons legally in open carry in the state, and you can do it in any park in Hillsborough County. And Hillsborough County's Veterans Memorial Park is one of these parks. And one day we had about 25 people out there. So naturally, the sheriff and the county commissioners were terrified. But I was just trying to bring some awareness to the incompetence and the Marxists in this county. And I had no idea the county I grew up in was as bad as it is. So.
You know, I had Donnie Kennedy on Monday night, and we talked about the Marxist that came from the 48ers during the war between the states, the war for Southern independence.
There you go.
Anyway, and so now we're still fighting the Marxists. You know, the Marxists are still our enemy. You know, whether they're from the north or from the south, the Marxists are still our enemy. Now, David, you guys originally filed a lawsuit. Obviously, I guess that's null and void now since HK has passed. But talk about the lawsuit. Oh, it's not passed. It's not null.
No, it's not passed. It's going to be continuing on with HK's estate as the plaintiff.
Great.
And this is with the family's permission. They know what's going on, and they're happy to help promote this. I'm not the actual lawyer that filed the suit. That was another lawyer that specializes in First Amendment. And I'd also like to point out that Ron's First Amendment has been limited too by the county, because they put up a big sign outside the park saying that was the only free speech zone outside the public park. And that doesn't fly well with the U.S. Constitution or the Florida Constitution, and I'm sure the Constitution of any state.
Well, there's that government speech thing.
Do you have any supporters in the Florida legislature? Or let me ask this question. Are the Republicans in the Florida legislature, generally speaking, as worthless as the Republicans in the Tennessee legislature, with exceptions? I know there's exceptions, but I'm just curious.
Well, we have some legislation pending in Florida that has the potential of protecting historic monuments and memorials in Florida, and it's moving. We are midway through the session, and it's moving. So, time will tell. Check back in a month. But this is our 7th year of trying to do it. So far, we have been able to obtain criminal penalties for vandals of memorials, and that has stopped the vandalism of monuments and memorials. We haven't had any vandalism since that was passed a few years back under Governor DeSantis. That was, if anyone wants to look it up, it was called House Bill 1, and that was during the George Floyd era. Right. And that was successfully passed, and the language that we wanted was incorporated.
Part of the Anti-Riot Act.
It was called House Bill 1, the Anti-Riot Act. But that didn't preclude cities and counties from just ripping things down because somebody was offended. This bill, interestingly, will protect any memorials 25 years or older. And there's two, some may like this, some may not, Martin Luther King Jr. memorials in Florida. Interestingly, that the NAACP came out opposed to this legislation.
Really?
There are a number of monuments to Spanish conquistadors.
Anything over 25 years old would be protected.
And down in Miami to the people that opposed the Cuban Revolution. All those, there's a World War II memorial in Sarasota, Florida, that also would be affected.
Well, there's Rev War monuments here in Florida to both sides. The Spaniards who were, allies of the Americans, and the British who were, of course, the enemy. Florida was not one of the 13 colonies.
Right.
Yeah. So Florida has a very interesting history. We did not become a state till the mid-1800s, just a few years between that war that we've been talking about. And so, there's so many memorials in Florida that aren't Southern Confederate memorials that would be protected by this legislation. But so many groups think if you Google Monument Protection Law of Florida, you'd think it's only about Confederate monuments, which most of them have been taken down thanks to the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Yeah, they're a scourge everywhere.
There's a monument in St. Augustine that was in the same park as the monument to the Confederate veterans from St. Augustine. But that monument, the earlier monument, has been up there a long time, since the time of the Spanish colonial governors.
Wow.
And it would be protected.
Good. You're not safe anywhere, even in the building we're in right now, it was the old Lee School.
After Robert E. Lee.
And then I think, I don't know when they changed the name. It hasn't been a school for a long time. You probably remember when it was. Mm-hmm. But at some point in time, instead of this being the Lee whatever, they had to change it. So it's not known as Lee anymore.
It was the Robert E. Lee Academy, and it was a school here. And back during the COVID period, the Floyd period, when everything started to change, some of the local council people and some of the people, member of the board, there's a board, some board member that's over how things are run here, and they made a decision to change the name, and they were afraid, the reasoning was if they didn't change the name, they were afraid somebody would burn it down.
Yeah.
That was the reasoning they gave.
Lee, just a minute. This has occurred since Mr. Edgerton passed, but there's been bills filed in Congress to change the name of the Robert E. Lee Memorial at Arlington House in Arlington. And so, Mr. Edgerton would be outraged by that because he felt Jackson and Lee were just the best ever. He admired them as Christian gentlemen and as the true friend of the black man. And to have Tim Kaine and Don Bacon, who has been outed as anti-American, even though he's a veteran, filing these bills, he would be outraged. So that's the latest, and that's just happened in the last few weeks, is a bill filed to remove the name of Robert Lee Memorial from the Arlington House, which of course was the Mary Custis Lee inheritance, which was the George Washington tribute, where Lee made his important decision to side with his home state and to not fight his family.
Yeah. like so many, it was, even and Lee actually didn't support secession, but he was not going to fight against his family and against his state. Now, there's a virtual memorial plan for HK this week, and I think we talked about that.
Saturday, and if you will allow me to send you the link, people who want to participate, if you could post it on the YouTube post here, people can sign up, and we'll send them details on Friday and again on Saturday, so they can sign up until an hour before the memorial starts at 3 o'clock and get a notice.
Okay, we'll put it in the video description. Real quick, Ron, before we go, anything else that you want to tell us real quick about your organization? Like I say, we're going to have you on probably at the end of the month.
Well, it's called the Grizzly Army Ministries. We're Grizzly. It's sort of kind of like the Southern Army. We don't have all the shoes and all the equipment, but I do a lot of cemetery maintenance. We do a lot of homeless feeding. It's very new. This whole advocacy project that we did on Veterans Day kind of derailed it for a little while, but we're getting back on track. It's a brand new 501c3, grizzlyarmy.com. If anyone would like to donate, we do have a pay link, and it's grassroots. It's as grassroots as you get, but it's just trying to help other veterans, all veterans. And Mr. HK was one of these veterans, and I really supported what he stood for after I got to know him, and he educated me a little more. And then it actually turns out Miss Linnell helped me get reunited with great-great-great-granddaddy James Madison Burgess. So I actually have Confederate lineage in my Confederate, in my family. So
good.
So
congratulations.
It's spiritual in nature. I'm a born-again Christian. That's why the devil came after me in the workplace. And the ministry, I'm going to be working on my chaplain's certificate later on this year. So if anyone would like to donate or help out, it's just thegrizzlyarmy.com. So I appreciate you having me, Dave. Thank you so much.
All right. Look forward to having you back, probably, like I say, the end of March, thereabouts. Closing thoughts. Anybody have anything they want to add?
I just had a fun little story. We were at a reenactment. Like I said, when I'd run across him, it's usually at a function like that, and so they'd always publish it in the Civil War Courier. They promote it heavy, and so this was during the Obama era, and he was not a very popular individual during that period because it was going against what was being spoken in Washington, D.C., and he was just totally against it. So some of the locals out of Chattanooga decided, it was a group of whites and blacks both, some college age, and they thought, well, we're going to come down and we're going to, run him off. Well, what they didn't realize was that the SCV has something called the Mechanized Cavalry, and they look like a bunch of outlaw bikers. Well, that was his bodyguard. Several of them. Creeker, a good friend of mine, was his personal bodyguard, so there was no getting to HK. He had a bunch of white bikers all around him.
Imagine that.
And if I could add one thing,
Yes.
he used to talk about Black Lives Matter rallies, and he would say there'd be one white guy in skinny jeans and 5 loudmouth white women, and we weren't finding any black people. There'd be no
that's
black people.
What we found a lot. Yeah, when they came after our statue in Henry County, that's what we found. Yep.
Well, hey, thank you all for being with us tonight, and thanks for all you do. We'll have you back on in the future, and let us know as things come up, and we'll be glad to pass it on. And Linnell, thank you you have brought me several top-notch guests. In fact, you were the one that got HK on my program, and I appreciate that.
He loved being with you. He was so happy.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a great show. But I want to thank you all again, and you guys have a great night, and we will see you in the future. I'll be back in a minute.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll be back in a minute with some announcements, but first a word from our sponsor, LifeWave. We'll be right back.
Light, the energy of life itself. Since the beginning of time, light has sustained us, fueled our growth, and shaped the world. Even Einstein recognized that everything we are is made of light. But what if we could harness the light within us, not just to live, but to renew, restore, and rejuvenate? Introducing LifeWave X39, the first product in the world that activates stem cells using our body's own light. Backed Backed by clinical research, multiple patents, and over 10 years of stem cell research, a revolutionary wearable light technology that unlocks the power of activating our own stem cells with a single, safe, affordable, non-transdermal patch that puts you back in control of how you look, feel, and perform. Unlike drugs or chemicals, X39 works naturally, awakening your body's ability to heal and thrive. It's time to unlock your full potential, restore your vitality, and embrace a healthier, more vibrant you.
I want to thank the audience for taking the time to watch our program tonight. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe, so please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons as well as the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We appreciate your support. We still hope to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of February. We only need less than 100, so please subscribe. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. Share us with your friends. Check out our audio podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and other platforms as well. Sign up for our weekly newsletter at our website, teeninformer.com. Find and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just a few announcements here. Join us this Sunday, February 22nd at 3 p.m. for a special show with Gene Andrews. Gene has been on before to talk about Nathan Bedford Forrest, but this Sunday we're going to talk about his service in the Marines during Vietnam. Hope you'll join us and spread the word. Our guest for this Monday, February 23rd at 7 p.m. will be John Llewellyn, Republican candidate for Tennessee House District 78. He will join us to tell us why he's running and what kind of reception he's getting on the campaign trail. And then at 8:30 p.m., the founder and president of THEA, which is the Tennessee Homeschool Education Association, Claiborne Thornton, will talk about his organization and upcoming legislation impacting homeschoolers and their parents. Please take the time to check out our other shows brought to you by West Tennessee TV by going to westtennesseetv.com or myparishtv.com. You can find links to the Mike Weatherford Show on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. and Sportscast with Jeremy Buccalow Sundays at 4 p.m. This Sunday, Jeremy welcomes the head coaches of Patriot Soccer and Track and Field for the Sports Spring Preview. Episode 2, the next Tuesday, which will be this coming Tuesday, Mike Weatherford welcomes Burton Staggs to talk about ongoing cases in Tennessee and across the country, including big nation case about Nancy Guthrie. That's it for now, so good night from Paris, Tennessee, that is.